Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Madeline.
I'm Julian.
And I'm Emilio. In addition to our theme cycle episodes we release every 2 weeks, we record one-off bonus episodes as we see fit. We've seen fit this week to record one of these bonus episodes to talk about a foundational horror film from the 1960s, an independent film that has spawned sequels and influenced an entire ever-evolving subgenre of thriller and horror films. That film is Night of the Living Dead, released 56 years ago this month. In 1968, it's directed, edited, and filmed by George A. Romero and co-written by him and John Russo.
And as of this recording, 56 years ago this week.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I know.
The movie came out on October 1st, 1968. We're recording this October 2nd.
What a way to kick off the month.
Absolutely. I
absolutely.
feel like we're definitely in an era now where every year there's a whole docket of horror films that are coming out around this time. And I don't know exactly when that started because it seems so commonplace now. So it's very cool to see that this was happening all the way back in 1968.
Yeah, definitely.
Although I don't know if distributors were thinking about scheduling Night of the Living Dead as a Halloween release per se.
Maybe not, but maybe. I feel like that seems like good marketing to me.
Yeah. We should say, before we get too much deeper into this, that we do not want to confuse Night of the Living Dead with a number of other films.
So many other films.
Yeah, whose names sound extremely similar. Though these movies both take place almost exclusively when the sun is down, the movie we're discussing right now is considerably darker in tone and should not be confused with Night on Earth, which is Jim Jarmusch's 1991 film. It consists of those 5 different vignettes.
While you're on that, this should also not be confused with another Jim Jarmusch film, The Dead Don't Die.
Oh, this is very true.
Yeah.
Or The Dead Don't Die Twice.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm specific. I was going to point that out anyway because The Dead Don't Die was specifically influenced by George A. Romero. And people who saw that film, it wasn't, very widely seen, but people who saw The Dead Don't Die commented that the way the zombies come to be in that is more in line with a Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead than, say, like a pandemic film like 28 Days Later.
Yeah, totally.
Or more recently, The Last of Us.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've said a couple of times that this is the 1968 Night of the Living Dead. This film was remade in 1990. So this is not to be confused with the 1990 Night of the Living Dead.
That's very true. Yes. Something I didn't realize about the movie that we're talking about today is that there was a whole copyright issue with this film that apparently allowed a ton of different versions of this to exist out in the ether and also have a bunch of copycat styled films named after it. So I do think it's extremely important that we make these distinctions.
I mean, there's so many Dead movies.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get into movies that this movie influences and just the zombie genre in general. You mentioned Dawn of the Dead. We also have Shaun of the Dead. We have Day of the Dead. We have the Evil Dead franchise. There are so many Dead movies.
Yes, absolutely.
And I have one more non-horror, not to be confused with, which is Night of the Living Dead, not to be confused with The Night of the Iguana. Which is like a Tennessee Williams play that is made into a film in 1964.
Okay.
Starring Richard Burton and Ava Gardner.
I saw a theatrical production of that in London one of the times I visited that starred Clive Owen. It's a great play, Tennessee Williams play.
And there were no zombies.
No zombies.
Were there iguanas?
There was not an onstage iguana. There was an implied iguana.
Did it take place at night?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
good.
Much
All right,
like
1 for
this
3.
film, Night of the Living Dead from 1968 takes place at night. But you would not know that at first because it is bright and sunny outside when this movie begins. But they do tell you it's 8 p.m. But that darn daylight savings time is just very confusing.
I know. Well, also in reference to one's state of existence and the time of day, which we've established, this movie should not also be confused with the James Bond film, The Living Daylights, from 1987. It's the first of the 2 James Bond films to star Timothy Dalton. I also realized that The Living Daylights stars Jerome Crabb. Do you guys know Jerome Crabb?
Yes, he
No.
is the, I'm trying to remember the exact character's name, but
he plays
he's
Dr. Nichols. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. He is in one of my favorite and formative films,
Which we've discussed.
The Fugitive, which is a world I'd like to live in. All roads lead back to The Fugitive.
Yeah, you don't want to be a fugitive.
That's true,
Yeah.
but any reference to the 1993 film starring Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones and Jerome Crabb, I'm okay with.
Yeah.
That's all right. It's fine by me.
Yeah.
Totally.
This should also not be confused with The Night of the Hunter.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
that's
true.
true.
Yeah, the 1955 movie, the sole directorial effort of Charles Laughton, starring Robert Mitchum in an unforgettable role.
Yeah.
Which is a movie that, I mean, it's a dark movie in a lot of ways, but it's not really horror as much as like kind of suburban, cautionary noir tale sort of thing. It's a really profound, interesting movie.
Oh,
that
it's great.
I assumed was a horror movie at first because of its title.
Yeah. I mean, there are some really creepy aspects to that movie.
There are, and there's some very creepy things, but more in the sense of like unvarnished societal commentary as opposed to allegorical display via zombies or something like that.
I also feel like that movie is a little creepy if you have trouble watching a predator of children.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say, too, that this movie should not be confused with the film just entitled Living, which is from 2022.
That's very
With
different.
Bill
Yeah,
Nighy.
exactly.
Yeah.
Extremely different. A recent adaptation of a film,
Ikiru.
Ikiru, that
yeah.
I love and is so good. And I actually did not see this movie Living because I love Ikiru so much. And
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just going to get let down.
I also
Yeah.
did not see Living, but Dougie did get a screener of Living mailed to us on DVD that we still did not watch. So I apologize to whoever directed Living and to Bill Nighy.
Is it still in your possession somewhere?
I think so. Probably. We probably could go watch it. Although I think that the SAG rules say that you're not supposed to watch. You're supposed to watch it for the purposes of voting, and the voting is long past.
Okay, so then we're not going to watch it.
technically-
Yeah. Don't worry. Anyone from SAG listening, we're not watching it.
So I think never have we had a film that's had this many other films that it could be confused with.
That's true.
So
we're deep into this already and haven't even started talking about Night of the Living Dead.
1968.
That's correct. Yes.
So
Yeah,
directed by George Romero, which we did say.
That's true.
we did.
But let's talk about what this movie is about.
Yes, please.
This is an incredibly influential film from 1968. At the beginning of the film, it is 8 p.m., but it is still bright and sunny outside. We meet siblings Barbara and Johnny as they pull up to the cemetery where their father rests. And as they're laying flowers on his grave, they're approached and ultimately attacked by a strange, pale man who appears to be in some kind of trance. Johnny is killed while Barbara escapes to a nearby farmhouse where she enters a semi-catatonic state of shock. Before long, she's joined by Ben, a man desperate to escape the growing horde of ghouls appearing down the East Coast. As Ben is boarding up the house in an attempt to bunker down, two other men appear from the cellar and reveal that they and three others have plans to hide out down there. Our group erupts into arguments about the best course of action, the best place to take shelter, upstairs or downstairs, and oh yeah, there's a corpse in the attic. And soon it's very clear that every one of these people is out for themselves or themselves and their family and loved ones. The house's radio and television reveal that an army of cannibalistic reanimated corpses are committing mass murder down the East Coast, supposedly due to radiation from a space probe returning from Venus.
Yeah, interesting.
What use is this information to our crew, who have an injured child and thus no way to escape on foot? They slowly begin to hatch a plan to escape to a nearby crisis center, but will the growing horde outside their walls prove to be too much for them?
Well done. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's what takes place. I think it should be said that this is the first time the three of us have seen this movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, none of us have seen this before.
Yeah, which is a little bit embarrassing, I think, on my part, at least. But I say
Surely
that
they had this at the video store.
I don't know what it is. Zombie movies, I don't see them and go like, oh, that's my thing
Yeah.
necessarily. But I will say that another movie that we had at our video store that was a new release when I was there, that was extremely formative and so much fun, and I watched it all the time as a teenager, was a movie that we talked about earlier, Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
I loved this movie. Yeah, that movie pays so much homage to the zombie/survival movie genre. And so I'm a little embarrassed to say that this movie that I enjoyed so much I didn't even go to the source material for. I mean, there are a lot of other films that movie is riffing on, but this is the one. This is the one that spawned it all.
Quintessential zombie movie. Zombies up until this point were very different. They they originate in Haitian culture, and a lot of the zombie movies that are in existence up to this point, like White Zombie, it's more of like a voodoo reanimation.
Right. Notably, Night of the Living Dead never says the word zombie.
Yeah. They say ghouls.
Yeah.
They also say assassins at one point, which
giving
I like.
them a lot of credit, I think. Yeah. This isn't like
an organized crime syndicate.
Exactly. No.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned Shaun of the Dead too, because of all these other movies that have dead in the title. That, not just because of the association, but Shaun of the Dead is definitely the one I was thinking about the most watching Night of the Living Dead, because there are a few salient details in both films that cross over. I mean, like things that happen in both plots are, well, for one thing, the first zombie you see is kind of just off in the background.
That's true.
Just like someone who's like sulking. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. There's that. Sorry. Yeah.
The first zombie you see is like off in the background. The main characters are not immediately aware that something's going on.
And he does look still pretty human.
Exactly.
I feel like as the film goes on, the ghouls, their appearances change some. They have more of the rotting flesh. But this guy at the very beginning, just like they kind of assume he's just a dude.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, it seems like Barbara goes up to him almost like to apologize, to be like, I'm sorry.
My brother,
my goofy brother over
jerk.
here, is deciding to have a laugh at your expense. And,
And to continue with the Shaun of the Dead comps, both movies also feature a crisis about what to do with a bitten character.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. And then, there's like the crisis about what to do before that character inevitably turns.
And it's funny because in this movie, they don't know that a bite is going to turn her.
Exactly.
We don't even find out until kind of later in the film that she's injured because she's been bitten.
Mm-hmm.
They do reveal that ultimately, but they just know she got injured. And then the parents reveal that she's been bitten. And I think those of us now who know about zombies are like, she's going to turn. But I also, in the back of my mind, am like, was Barbara bitten while she was fighting off this guy? Was is the corpse upstairs gonna turn? So I'm like, which of these is gonna, it's the smoking gun. Which of the three of them is gonna turn first?
Right.
Yeah. Right. I was thinking those same thoughts too. And then, one more Shaun of the Dead comp too is a little more towards the ending of both movies, or not to spoil Shaun of the Dead, but both of them end with, an onslaught of zombies into this singular location. And, something is done. And there's also a retreat to a cellar to evade them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there are other details between the two movies that differ. In fact, the final note of Night of the Living Dead is quite different from Shaun of the Dead.
I mean, absolutely.
We've got later I think we'll talk about this final note because it is definitely a note.
For sure.
But I had to think, of all the movies that you could compare Night of the Living Dead to, Shaun of the Dead was certainly the one I thought of the most.
Well, I'm curious, what other kind of zombie / apocalyptic survival type films have you guys seen? What other ones do you guys have to reference?
Well, so the freshest thing on my mind is actually a television series that I already mentioned, The Last of Us.
Because you just finished that.
I just finished season 1. And I mean, that's a fresh new thing on TV anyway. I mean, the game that it's based on has existed for like a decade now.
Yeah, a little bit more.
But yeah, so that is, and that, like something like 28 Days Later, is a pandemic story where, I guess, the comparison you can make is that, these zombies exist in hordes and that, someone who is bitten can turn.
Yeah.
But then The Last of Us is all about it's as much about the nature of the zombie onslaught as it is about what the humans do around it. In fact, sometimes it's more about what the humans do in response.
Which I think is also The Walking Dead is another huge, cultural reference for zombies. That it was originally a comic book and then the show came out in the 2010s. And I think it still has variations on television even now. Mm-hmm. And that's another one where it's I had a zombie phase. I'm just going to throw that out there now.
Okay.
I had a phase where I watched a lot of zombie stuff, and I did watch the first few seasons of The Walking Dead, and I did like it quite a lot. I did fall off of it. I don't totally believe that it would hold up if I watched it now, but I did have a t-shirt that said "Fight the dead, fear the living," and that I think is kind of it. That's the moral. If that's probably not the right word, but like that's the crux of a lot of these stories. Is like that it's about the zombies, yes, but it's about the humans and their interactions and ultimately their self-interests.
Right. And to the point that you were making before, these movies, if they were just about the zombies themselves, would be really boring really fast, right?
Yeah.
It's what something like a zombie apocalypse does to our notions of civilized society and what's right and wrong, where things get really interesting and kind of juicy, right?
Yeah. I think that after you watch a certain amount of horror movies, it becomes clear that any great horror movie, whether it intends it or not, has some kind of commentary on social dynamics and often gender politics too. And also, I mean, there's some kind of human relationship. There's a lot of horror movies about parenthood too.
Yep.
And so it's the more things you see, I think the more abundantly clear that becomes. And the Night of the Living Dead, I mean, I think that on the part of George A. Romero and his whole crew at Image 10, they probably intended no more than just to make a compelling zombie movie at that time. But I mean, it's been read by so many different people as this response to what was going on in the 1960s, cultural and political upheaval. And I think, there's just as much room to see it as that, as just a kind of a, forgive the term, dumb fun zombie movie too.
Kind of a schlocky B movie that
it's very low budget.
But that still captures your attention. And
I mean, another one that I thought about that I mentioned earlier was The Evil Dead. But I think like with The Evil Dead, that kind of goes back to the voodoo thing that in The Evil Dead, the corpses are reanimated because they find the Book of the Dead in the basement.
Right.
And that's, I think, an interesting film to throw into this conversation, because even though they do have their little crew or whatever, in my memory, they're pretty quickly whittled down to small numbers.
In The Evil Dead?
In the first Evil Dead?
Oh, yeah.
The kind of human element of we're fighting each other and we're trying to figure out what to do, I feel like that's kind of absent in The Evil Dead.
Yeah, well, I think it kind of becomes more of a Bruce Campbell vehicle.
Exactly.
Yeah. I should mention, since we're on this note now, that I actually have kind of a difficult time talking about that franchise because I was forced to watch part of the first one when I was a small kid. Yeah, and that is a bad movie to be exposed to prematurely. So it's not to say we
that does seem very scarring.
Yeah, not to say we can't talk about it, but that I will be guarded in how I discuss it if it does come up again. But since we're talking about childhood experiences relating to movies like this, Night of the Living Dead was released 1 month before the MPAA rating system was instituted, and so. That meant that it didn't have a rating, for one thing, but also that a lot of children were allowed into theaters.
That's nuts.
That is insane.
Yeah, and then according to Roger Ebert, his reaction when seeing the movie, I'm referring to the Wikipedia article here, was that a lot of kids, for I think the first half or so of it, reacted kind of as you would expect regular audience members to do, cheering, shouting at moments when you expect to, but that as the movie started to get towards its conclusion, there was just this cold silence that befell them, and that those kids just didn't know what to make of what they were seeing, and that they seemed almost kind of scarred, and they were crying by what was going on.
Do you think that it also could have that adults might have also felt that way too, possibly? I mean, because there is a thing that does happen with about 20-25 minutes left in this movie where things really kick into overdrive. There is this kind of middle third where you're kind of
nothing's really moving along at that point because there is so much arguing.
Yeah, there are these characters who are just kind of getting to know one another in this very turbulent situation.
They're sizing each other up.
Right, exactly. But then, the last 25 minutes or so of the movie, I feel just kicks into high gear in a way that feels very different than the rest of the film.
Yeah,
I would agree that as a kid watching it, there's very little in the beginning of the film that would kind of be scarring. But then you have a a pickup truck blow up,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you know, people feasting on entrails, and then it gets kind of weird.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the points that Roger Ebert made, that which I agree with, is that I mean, you know, part of this is just based on observation, so it's not opinion, but that kids root emphatically for heroes in stories that they see when they're young. And that if that hero doesn't reach a happy ending, that can be, you know, the tragedy of that can hit a kid harder than it can hit an adult.
I was definitely thinking about that children's movies always have happy endings.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of a movie that's appropriate to show children that doesn't end on at least like a
note.
slightly optimistic note. Whereas this movie's ending is the complete opposite.
The only movie I can think of that might be like that is Avengers Infinity War, which of course is undone. The ending of that is undone by Avengers Endgame.
I would also argue that's not a movie for I mean, it's a movie for children, but it is a PG-13 movie.
It's true.
It's not for 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
Even though they saw it, but you know my point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I remember bringing it up too briefly when we had our ET conversation, that I think, you know, part of why I could watch a lot of Spielberg movies when I was a kid, but could not stomach like something like what Sam Raimi did, was that Spielberg movies have happy endings.
Yeah.
I watched Jurassic Park at that same age and I was fine.
It's so interesting because it is a happy ending, but there is a bit of sadness, I think, sometimes. And you could say that about E.T. too.
Yeah.
Something has happened here, and people are never going to be the same.
Yeah.
That would land differently, I guess, with an adult than a kid.
But yeah, so like Night of the Living Dead, I mean, I think, you know, as you know, we're all seasoned cinephiles, and when we see the denouement, like a denouement like the one that this movie has, then it's you know, it's not super surprising because we have seen what movies that have been influenced by this.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't take anything away from it, as much as just to say this is where it came from.
Yeah, I think it actually adds a lot to this movie to think about just how influential it ended up being.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I don't know. The ending I wasn't really ready for. We'll talk about that later. But
actually, same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'd love to get into a little bit of the history of zombies in film. As we said, they don't actually use the word zombie in this. They do end up using it in the sequel. They use it in Dawn of the Dead. But in this movie, they're ghouls or assassins or monsters or flesh eaters, mostly ghouls. Before this, zombies came from Haitian culture. We had, as I mentioned, White Zombie, which is 1932. But the zombies in this are a voodoo creation created and controlled by Bela Lugosi's character. And then there's Revolt of the Zombies, which is a loose sequel of that film of White Zombie. And then we have I Walked with a Zombie in 1943. And then we have the I Am Legend novel that comes out in 1954, which was heavily influential on this film. However, I think that those creatures have more characteristics of vampires.
Yeah.
They have like an aversion to garlic and like sunlight, but they are also undead, which I like.
The Venn diagram.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're there.
Yeah. And then obviously I Am Legend eventually made into, I Am Legend has the Last Man on Earth adaptation. And then there's also like the Will Smith adaptation in the 2000s. Have you guys seen either of those?
I haven't.
I've seen the Will Smith one.
Yeah.
And that, I think it's like, I remember it being like a good, not like anything great, but a good movie. But that movie does have what is probably my favorite Will Smith acting moment in it during this rather, quietly tragic scene.
Yeah.
It's actually also embarrassing that I haven't seen that movie because that movie was being filmed right outside of my dorm when I was at NYU.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. They transformed Washington Square Park and into this whole thing, and they had like blown out cars, and they were setting off explosive charges at night that were rattling our windows. And and so I should have seen this movie and I just didn't. I lived it. I lived the making.
You
of
didn't
it.
need to watch it.
I remember
you were
reading
there.
that the Will Smith character is supposed to live like in one of those townhouses off of Washington Square.
Yeah. And there was a joke going around where people were like, I didn't get to class on time because of Will Smith, because they were closing off streets, and they were like, my class is like down the block, and they're like, you have to wait for yada yada shot to be filmed. And so that was the thing that was going around a little bit. Fall semester of 2006.
Wow. Okay. But then, we have this movie in 1968. We also have in 1966 Plague of the Zombies, which is like the kind of rotting flesh, greenish skin caused by infection, which is, are also characteristics that ultimately carry over, not necessarily to this film, although the rotting flesh thing, yes, but the caused by infection, that happens, it becomes very influential later. As we said, in this movie, it's meant to be caused by radiation from Venus.
Mm-hmm. I kind of like how it's a little bit ambiguous, though.
I like how they're, speculating.
Yeah. It's like that's what they're putting out over the airwaves, but they're not even that convinced of this.
Yeah, because it's like ground zero.
Yes.
They're like, this is happening right now. We're just like trying to figure it out. And that's our best hypothesis.
Yeah. And it's, even for like the pandemic zombie movies too, even though like pandemic puts a little more certainty on it, that there's that similar feeling of like, we don't know what's going on. That's like, I mentioned before that there's like the, in Jim Jarmusch's movie, The Dead Don't Die, there's a little more of a Romero quality than there is like the 28 Days Later or Last of Us thing. And that's because what happens in that movie, I think, if I remember correctly, is that there's like supposed to be some kind of drilling on the North Pole that like fracking that tilts the earth off its axis and people are suddenly just resurrected because of that.
Oh, wow.
And,
that's such an interesting explanation.
It sounds ridiculous, but then like the outcome of it is something that you take more seriously as you watch it.
Is it more ridiculous than radiation from Venus?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No. I did want to point out one thing because you're creating a timeline of
definitely interject.
No, the presence of like the radios and the broadcasts and television and the way that people are relying on it to find out information really reminded me of, you guys know about the Orson Welles radio play version of the H.G. Wells novel, The War of the Worlds, that took place also in October, but October 30th of 1938. And he did a dramatic reading of it with a couple other people, and it caused a massive panic throughout the country to those who didn't hear that at the top of the broadcast. They said, look, this is a fictional play. But I love that happened. I think it's one of those really interesting case studies of media in its early stages.
And how affecting it can be.
And how it can kind of rile up masses and cause panic. And in some ways, I feel like this movie gets a little bit at that too.
I totally agree. Harry is one of the guys that comes up from the cellar, and he has a wife and child. His wife Helen and his daughter Karen, who's been bitten, are in the cellar. And at first he won't let them come up, and he's like, "I'm going back down there. We're boarding up the door. Stay up here if you want, losers, but we'll be downstairs where it's safe." But then when Helen finds out that there's a radio and a television upstairs, she's so mad. She's like, "We have to know what's going on. That's the only way we can know what's going on. And you're trying to lock us down in the basement."
Yeah, absolutely.
So then this movie has an official sequel, Dawn of the Dead, in 1978. And in that film, they do use the word zombie. A really interesting thing that I found out is that for Night of the Living Dead, did you guys hear about this? Was like re-edited and released in Europe under the title Zombie with no E. It's like zombie.
No, I didn't know that.
And I found this so interesting because there's also Zombie 2, which is kind which is kind of an unofficial sequel to this film also. So you can kind of think about this movie as having two alternate sequels.
I'm feeling two different things from past conversations. There's Heather's Fatal Attraction, and then I'm also
Lethal Attraction.
Thank you. Yeah, so there's Heather's Lethal Attraction, and then there's also the authorized novel sequel of E.T.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this movie had one of those weird tracks in Europe.
Yeah, and zombie.
I like
I like
zombie. Just like
zombie. Just to not to be confused with all the other zombie things. We're going to call it zombie.
Okay, perfect.
Zombie. Do you want to know who edited this film for its European release?
Hal Ashby.
Someone a little more Italian.
Dario
Argento.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah, ding, ding, ding. And it was given a new score by the band Goblin.
Yes. Who did a lot of work for Dario Argento's stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think, Emilio, you talked a little bit about like the weird copyright stuff with this film in general. So I think it kind of carries over to this weird zombie European release. I don't have time to get too far into it, but I mean, essentially, Zombie was a huge hit in Italy. It did really, really well. So they're like, well, we want to make a sequel. And so they made Zombie 2 by screenwriter Dardano Sacchetti.
Okay.
So that's out there too.
It's out there for someone to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how successful Zombie 2 was. Going forward, there's also a really big zombie connection in the music world, which is obviously the Thriller music video.
Oh, yeah.
So we have the Thriller music video. We have Return of the Living Dead in 1985. We have Evil Dead. We'll skip over that for Julian's sake.
Thank you.
But we also then have the rise of zombies in video games. We have Resident Evil and House of the Dead, both released as games in 1996, and both of which get film adaptations.
That's true.
Either of you guys seen Resident Evil or House of the Dead films?
No.
Although, did Uwe Boll direct one of those?
I do not have that in front of me
Okay.
at the moment.
Yeah. He's an interesting person to look up. Google him if you don't know. Uwe Boll.
Okay.
That seems like a logical guess there.
I know he did like a bunch of other. He did the movie Alone in the Dark.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in the 2000s, we start to have these zombie movies where zombie characteristics start to change. And 28 Days Later is a big part of that because that's where they start running.
That's true.
Very dangerous.
Yeah.
That's like the one thing you have up on the zombies up until this point is that they're pretty slow moving.
That's one of my favorite line readings in this whole movie, by the way. The reporter asks the police sheriff, he's like, "Are they slow moving?" And the sheriff goes, "Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up."
Yeah, but then like I was listening to the one of the Criterion Channel commentaries on Night of the Living Dead in preparation, and this was recorded with George Romero himself and a couple other people involved in the 90s, and they were saying that something funny about the movie itself is you get these contradictory characteristics with the zombies sometimes where they're said to be like slow and weak, but yet they can shatter car windows.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, I mean, they go kind of Cro-Magnon man a little bit and like discover crude tools.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the word that I just keep putting to them is primal.
Yeah.
And that there's a weakness and a lack of conventional intellect to them, but that when they get what they want, they are fierce.
They're also animalistic in that way. Like animals can also, band together for a common goal.
Right.
I think in a way that this horde manages to do.
That's true.
And 28 Days Later, as I said, they're running, but also we're back to the virus thing. It's a rage virus caused by a chimpanzee that's let loose.
Dude, the opening scene of that movie. I saw that movie in theaters, and that opening scene was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
Totally.
I actually should mention too that the one time I watched that movie, it was at a very fitting time, which was in April 2020.
Well.
Yeah, the different pandemic out and about.
Yeah,
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Speaking of pandemics, Zombieland is another huge zombie cultural reference point. Comes out in 2009, and for that one, it's a mutated mad cow disease. And this is a film where we start to have variations on the zombies. They evolve. There are different versions of them in this one film. So we have in Zombieland the Homer, supposedly named after Homer Simpson, very Zombieland, which is slow and strong, and apparently it blows up when it dies. We also have the Hawking, 2009, which is like the clever one.
Stephen Hawking?
Yes.
Okay.
We have the Ninja, which is like quiet and stealthy and can sneak up on you. And then we have the T-800, which is the most powerful and can withstand damage, including bullets.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder who the T-1000 would have been.
Yeah, great question.
Maybe, I didn't see Zombieland 2 Double Tap.
I did not either.
Maybe that one, it shows up in that sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we talked about The Walking Dead, and that they're referred to as walkers, hence The Walking Dead. And they also have the roamers, which are attracted to noise, and the lurkers, which are very lethargic. We also have World War Z around this time.
That's true. World War Z.
Which was a huge blockbuster, very financially successful.
Thank you, Brad Pitt.
Thanks, Brad. And then we get into this period of these kind of romance zombie movies.
Warm Bodies.
We have
Bodies
Warm Bodies, which is also based on a book.
I saw that movie on a lark and really liked it.
It
was fun.
I have not seen it yet.
It's a movie. I think a fairly enjoyable movie. I like Nicholas Hoult. I feel like I enjoy Nicholas Hoult when he's in things.
Yeah, he's good.
And then we have Corpse Bride. I think you could argue there's a zombie in there. We have Life After Beth.
Oh yeah, the Aubrey Plaza.
Yeah, we have Pushing Daisies, which is television.
Oh yes, yeah.
We have on television also iZombie, Santa Clarita Diet, American Gods, which is based on the Neil Gaiman novel. And then we're back to more video games. We have Silent Hill, we have Days Gone, and finally I'll end with something we already talked about, which is The Last of Us.
Yeah.
Which is another huge cultural reference. I played both Last of Us games. In The Last of Us, both the games and the television show, you also have 4 different kinds of zombies. You have the runners, you have the stalkers, you have the clickers, and you have the bloaters. And essentially, the longer you are infected, you move through this evolution cycle.
Interesting.
So ideally, if you get turned into a zombie, you want to be killed as a runner. You really do not want to make it to bloater stage.
I mean, I think nobody wants to be described as a bloater.
Yeah.
Living or dead.
Yeah.
But,
that sounds fitting.
One of the distinctions of The Last of Us as well is that as much as it is a pandemic story, it's a fungal virus.
Yes, that is caused by a cordyceps brain fungus.
Yeah, which is like one of its distinguishing factors as opposed to, say, the OG here, 28 Days Later, where I'm trying to remember. I think it's more like a bloodborne virus there that like
for 28 Days Later.
Yeah,
it's a rage virus is what I have written down.
So it's fungi that create zombie.
Sure, technically.
I don't really know Last of Us, but
that's fine.
I'm trying to take things in as they come.
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't play the game, and I thought the television show was absolutely amazing. Totally floored me.
Cool. That's everything I've got for the history of zombies. Thank you for coming to my lecture.
No, that was really, really comprehensive.
Yeah,
thank you. That's fantastic.
If I may add one thing on, like, I think a pretty silly note, there's also Pride and Prejudice in zombies.
Yeah, I thought about that, and like Abraham Lincoln is a vampire hunter, I think, but it still feels like that's in the same.
Yeah, or it's like, take one cultural phenomenon and insert it into historical IP.
Yeah.
I feel like that was a short-lived trend.
Very short-lived.
Totally.
Yeah. So one of the things about Night of the Living Dead, we've already said that this crosses over into many other related films, is that, it's as much about the human reaction to terror as much as it is about the terror itself. And so, I mean, Madeline, you already mentioned the inspiration of Night of the Living Dead, I Am Legend, the novel. And that I read on the Wikipedia entry about the movie that George Romero specified that whereas I Am Legend is about the aftermath of an apocalypse, that Romero wanted to focus on how people respond to a global disaster as it develops.
In the moment, yeah.
Yes. Which I think was a very great move on his part. And so then throughout the film, there is just this very palpable sense of desperation that some characters, like all characters, however, level-headed or hot-headed they are, that there's, they're all desperate in one way or another. And I was just wondering, because, this movie has often been read as like a political or social allegory, like to what extent do we think these desperate acts are, offer like a kind of a poetic vision, a microcosm of greater society? And to what extent are they just pure survival instinct? And I mean, I thought of this question. I'll start this off with one thought that I had as I was watching, which is that I could see an argument being made for between the dynamics of Ben, who is the main protagonist of the film, and Harry, who is, he's not an antagonist, but he definitely is at odds with Ben. That I could see an argument being made that like Ben is the liberal and Harry is the conservative in that case, because Harry wants to hole up in the cellar and avoid the impending apocalypse, basically just wait it out if he can. in spite of the fact that he doesn't know his daughter is going to turn. And that Ben's a little bit more like, let's stay up and have a fighting chance. Let's stay up on the ground level.
Are those characteristics that are like particularly like conservative or liberal?
Well, I thought of it that way just because like the one term that's often associated with conservative ideas is laissez-faire, hands off. And I think that you can see it in the actions of a lot of, conservative politicians and just people with that view that there is kind of a just like let things happen sort of outlook. Whereas, on the liberal end, there's maybe a little bit more interest in government investment in directly in events going on and in fighting something that is an onslaught as opposed to just kind of resignedly accepting it.
I think you could also take this metaphor literally. It's more conservative and it's more safe.
Yeah.
Like they're playing it safe. Harry wanting to stay in the basement, that's a more conservative, not politically conservative, but just as a descriptor,
That's
as
true.
an adjective. Yeah. It's a more conservative, I think, take on a plan.
Yeah. So that was, this is, I'm kind of developing the thoughts as I speak now, but that was just something that struck me while watching that, maybe, I don't know if other viewers see that in those characters, but that was just a thought that I had. But like, what do you two think? Like, do we see allegory in the behaviors of these characters?
I see allegory in the behaviors, but I don't know in the sense that they're directly relating to a specific political leaning.
I think for the most part, I would concur with that. I just, I had that one thought with those two characters, but like Emilio, you said earlier that there's a lot of types that come about here.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that really struck me was that everybody who is in that house, who's boarded up in that house, has these very particular character traits. Mm-hmm. You were describing this sort of catatonic state that Barbara has, and she more or less represents somebody who is traumatized. Like Absolutely. She's the one who this experience that puts her in such a state of trauma that for most of the film she is helpless and more or less just detached.
Yeah.
And Ben is kind of the opposite of that. Ben is somebody who seems like he wants to hatch a plan.
Yeah.
But you also see other characters appear. We were talking about, Harry. They also came into this house and
I don't know if it's explained how they get there exactly.
But it's not their home. They've just found this cellar.
Yeah, because they said they don't know the area. I think that Tom, I believe,
knows the area.
Yeah, Tom and his girlfriend Judy know the area.
Yeah, I think the implication is that body that's been partially eaten at the top of the stairs, that was the homeowner.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and then it's like you have Helen, who is Harry's wife, who also, just can't seem to remove whatever frustrations happened before this crisis with the people that she's around and with her husband, and also the fear of what's happened to her child. And so she's kind of seeing everything through that perspective. And then you have the child who for a while I think just kind of represents, this sort of responsibility, this added responsibility that these people have. And then there's this sort of young couple, right? Tom to me is like one of those classic characters where he's the young soldier who like can't help but show the picture of his girlfriend to one of the other guys in the army, and you're like, oh no, this guy's dying. Like, there's this sense when you see him that like, he's got a good heart and he's good intentioned, and he'll be a good foot soldier for whatever plan gets hatched.
Because he's kind of caught in the middle between Ben and Harry. Like Ben says they need to stay upstairs and they need to board everything up. Harry wants to go stay in the cellar, and Tom is caught in between them and is trying to convince Harry like, oh, maybe you guys should, come
work
up here.
Together.
Like, let's work together.
Yeah. It felt, and I'm just thinking now, he feels very much like a character you'd have in one of the Alien movies. I feel like there's always someone like that.
Interesting. I wonder who he would be in Aliens.
I feel like there are some characters who get killed off early in that movie. Like, what is that guy's name?
Drake. I think it's Drake.
Okay.
I think it's Drake.
Let's go Drake.
Yeah, let's say
Mark
that.
Mark Ralston, that's him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom is Drake from Aliens. And would that make Judy? Judy would be the one that drives the
other woman.
The other woman that lands and then
pilot.
yes, yeah.
Immediately finds out there's a xenomorph.
A xenomorph,
yeah.
yes, exactly. I'm gonna say that's her.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not zombie movies, but definitely influenced by this sort of thing too.
Oh, for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
See, I would hesitate though to call Helen Vasquez.
Yeah.
Because I
don't think we have a Vasquez.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Because Barbara's certainly not Vasquez.
I would definitely say that Ben has some real Ripley energy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Well, actually, one broader point that I think is worth making about Ben too is that, and this is actually another thing that made me think a lot of The Last of Us, is that he's clearly the character who did not know he was going to be in this situation. I mean, none of them did, but finds out he is unexpectedly resourceful in this dire situation. And I mean, The Last of Us comparison is, I think you meet a lot of characters in that, I've just seen the one season. I don't know what happens in the second part, but
I do.
But you meet a lot of characters who you get the sense are these people that never expected or wanted to be in the sort of leadership positions that they're in.
Yeah. In
this zombie apocalypse, that, they're forced to do it. And, for some of them, it's like some of them take it up with pride. Others are kind of like, okay, I guess I have to do this. Yeah. But like Ben, I mean, that was something that I thought made him very real in Night of the Living Dead.
I gotta say though, Ben has one very puzzling moment.
Yeah.
When Barbara actually starts speaking, she is incredibly calm when she starts recounting things.
Right?
And he's like, I need you to stay calm.
That was so infuriating.
It was so weird. I'm like, wait, what are you doing? She's totally calm. And she does get like more animated later, but
perhaps it's because he's telling her to calm down.
Yeah, I don't know. It was like, I was just like, you've gotten nothing from her.
She's finally explaining to you what's happening.
Yeah. And he's like, girl, no, chill out. Like, wait a minute. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. No wonder Barbara then shuts up for the rest of the movie.
There you go.
Like, people are going to yell at me again.
Yeah, and it comes up too in stories of the making of this movie that there was a script, but that a lot of it was kind of abandoned as shooting took place.
Yes, it definitely seems like a moment where it's
and a lot of what you see in the movie was kind of improvised in terms of dialogue, and but also, I mean, in terms of like changing character details, that the character of Ben was originally written. I mean, it's well known that it was originally written for a white actor, but also he was written as kind of a tough trucker type, and that when
an uneducated trucker type. Yes.
Yeah. But then when Dwayne Jones was cast in the role, I mean, for one thing, that was not Dwayne Jones in real life. He was more of an intellectual, as I believe George Romero and John Russo put it in the commentary, but that he wanted to kind of soften that character and make, that was his way of making him more believable.
Yeah. I think that's one of the lovely things also about this movie. You were saying about the improvised dialogue.
Yeah.
By the simple fact that this movie had a non-existent budget, they were just trying to get this thing in the can any way they could.
Right.
And so it is one of those movies, I think, where you can feel the input from other people and the actors themselves.
Yeah. And ultimately, I mean, you talked about how it's very well-known fact that originally this script was not really written with a race in mind for the character of Ben. But, since it's written by white people, generally, I think the default for them was that this entire cast would be white. And it's so interesting, I think, to hear them talk about this film when they do end up casting Dwayne, and that it does. I don't think they ever had any intention of it changing anything. They didn't change the script.
Yeah.
But then because this is 1968, it's
the simple fact that he's on screen.
It's a very tumultuous time. Yeah. Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated this year. The production of this film is finished before the assassination. But then after the assassination, then with the release of this film later that year and the ending of the film, which we'll get to soon, it changes, I think, the tone of the film a lot from maybe what was originally intended, but in a really fascinating way.
In a really
and like a
interesting way.
trailblazing way.
Yeah. I would say too that it's not just Martin Luther King and his assassination in 1968, but decades, if not hundreds of years of violence against Black Americans that is there. It is the thing that unfortunately or fortunately in some weird way, when you see this movie, it's kind of this inescapable aspect of the film when you have a Black protagonist, particularly in 1968. I mean, one of the movies that watching The Night of the Living Dead brought back to me in this double feature pairing was Blazing Saddles, because that movie is so much about a heroic Black character and how it makes the audience feel. I think this movie addresses a lot of what Blazing Saddles also addresses in a very indirect way.
Yeah.
This is a few years before blaxploitation too. When you get a little more of those movies that are, specifically focused on Black protagonists, not always heroes, but, people who you can relate to and empathize with.
Yeah, I mean, as you said earlier, even having him on screen is a really important moment, I think, in film history. This is the same year that Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is released.
Or I think the year it's celebrated, right?
Because it's
67. Yeah. Exactly. And I think that the filmmakers themselves... they were not interested in making the Ben character like a Sidney Poitier type.
Yeah.
Right. That it wasn't like the Defiant Ones. It's not looking for that type of characterization. And Sidney Poitier is a really fascinating, other side of the coin when you think about when you see a character like Ben on screen, because it was a strong consideration from the white filmmakers of films with Sidney Poitier as a lead, that he seemed palatable and friendly and approachable to mainstream white America. Yeah. And I don't think that was a concern at all for George A. Romero or
for this film.
Right.
No one in this film is kind or approachable because they're in the middle of like an apocalyptic event.
Right.
But I totally take your point, because Ben enters and he's just like immediately goes into action.
Right.
And then that's what's important. They don't reference his race because it's not important in what's happening to these characters.
Right.
They have bigger worries.
Although I do feel like the Harry character, whether he says it or not, his reticence to fall in line or to see Ben as the authority, there's something there. Like in the performance, you can absolutely see it, even if it's unspoken.
Yeah, and this movie it takes place and is made in rural Pennsylvania too. And Pennsylvania is well known to be a swing state. So, it's just in this place where it feels like a little bit politically ambiguous anyway. Yeah. And, there's sort of the sense that you can, even in spite of the specific location, you can run into any type of American here.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. So there's actually that kind of, I wasn't thinking so consciously of that before, but that does bring me back to what I was thinking earlier about Harry and Ben being kind of two sides of arguably a political coin in the movie.
I was thinking a little bit too. So 1968, that's the year that Richard Nixon is the Republican candidate who wins. Thank you. And I had like one of those weird like limitless moments where I was watching this and I was like, wait, I remember this essay, and it triggered something in my brain. I remember that his speech when he accepted the RNC's nomination is one of these speeches that gets referenced by a lot of historians thinking about where the country went. And if you read some of the verbiage from it, he is speaking to the suburban voter and talking about this idea that our country is in this state of turmoil and there's lawlessness everywhere. And he's positioning himself as the law and order candidate, the one that's going to right the ship, and he's going to bring security and peace to Americans in America, because there's a whole thing happening in Vietnam as well. That's a huge part of this. But to me, one of the things that I couldn't help but think of when I saw Harry was that he kind of represents that suburban mentality of like, I've moved out of the city. I've moved out of this area where there could be all this lawlessness. Why am I having to deal with it? And his wife as well being like, go to the radio. Like there must be some explanation for this. That like we are living in a time, I think, where the idea of the suburban or the person who's moved out of the city is still living in fear that all the stuff that plagues urban communities, all the things that they believe that they were able to move away from, are still encroaching on their lives outside of the city.
Yeah. And I mean, you used a good word that you used there is encroachment, which is, a key detail of how the zombies appear in Night of the Living Dead, or how they appear and how they act, the sense of encroachment. But I think that informs a lot of the critical readings of the film too, where, it's, I mean, you mentioned the Vietnam War as well, and that there's this sense like that some of what I think some people have argued that what you see the characters go through in the film can be considered an allegory for like, struggling to figure out what to do amidst the horror of that.
Right.
Totally.
Right.
Or like, like it's almost like this karma for like the horrors that are existing abroad coming home.
Exactly. That's one of the readings I felt on it for sure too.
Absolutely. And speaking of that time in media and the Vietnam War, that like a lot of critics have said like the black and white imagery of Night of the Living Dead kind of lends it this newsreel quality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That there's
I
something,
felt that too.
Yeah, something more real about it, or if not real specifically, more that speaks to that time in that way. And also that something that came up in the commentary too is that during that montage in the movie, as they're watching the television and all of those different nearby towns and cities come up on the screen, and they list all the emergency locations you can go to, that there was a concern, I think, on behalf of the production company or the distributors, that those scenes, because they referenced real towns and cities, that there would be kind of the War of the Worlds effect because of it.
Well, that's why I thought of World of Worlds.
Yeah, and I think the newscasters in this are played by actual newscasters, I believe.
I like that.
Yeah, and it's I think there's a few rules in the movie where like the people are more or less actually who they are. That like the actors who played Harry and Helen, I mean, they weren't living in exactly the circumstances of the movie, but they were a real couple.
And I love that the actor who plays Harry, Carl Hardman, was like a jack of all trades behind the scenes on this film.
Yeah.
He was like a producer. I think he also had some hand in the effects, the visual effects.
Yeah.
Or the makeup art too.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's deeply entrenched in the production of this film.
Yeah. And, since you mentioned the makeup as well, one thing I have to say is that as much as it is a movie you can tell was made on a shoestring budget, and that a lot of the effects are not conventionally convincing, as you might put it, I still I did not care watching it. I totally bought it. But it's just, the charm of like this film that's made in a very down to earth way. I think that's a big part of its charm. But that, another thing too on the casting front is that you have a lot of the people inside the house. They did double duty as zombies outside too. There's a scene where Marilyn Eastman, who plays Helen, that she also plays the zombie who eats the bug.
Yeah. Nice.
And that like a lot of the zombies were like people just like co-workers of the filmmakers, and something that they said in the commentary too was that this is a pretty interesting point, is that a lot of those people they considered kind of like squares, like pretty straight-laced people, and that when they gave them the opportunity to eat fake intestines and things like that, that they went wild on set.
Love that.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
That it really got them out of their shells.
I also heard something about the Barbara's brother, Johnny, that his character, you see, puts on driver's gloves, and that it was really important for him to have them, because when he appears later in the film,
That's how you know it's him.
That's how you know it's him. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are like the little details that you have to get right if you have no budget.
Absolutely.
And that's fun. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to point out is that Harry and Helen and their daughter Karen are an actual family.
Mm-hmm.
So Carl Hardman, who plays Harry, and Marilyn Eastman, who play Helen, are married in real life, and their daughter is played by their real life daughter.
Fun.
So that's fun.
I can tell when that daughter starts just hacking away at her mom. There's some real life aggression being worked out.
Yeah, I remember like there was an anecdote on the Wikipedia too about like I think some critic at the time saying like who hasn't felt that at some point.
To murder your mom with a gardening hoe or something?
Not murder, but like, it's just like the pent up aggression at a parent that manifests in that scene.
Who said this?
Some like I can look it up.
We don't need to. I'm just saying that perhaps this particular person has some pent up.
They might be working out some stuff. Themselves.
Yeah, saying more about themselves than greater society.
Right. Yeah.
So we've referenced the ending a lot. But
yeah, we have.
I think we want to dig a little bit more into it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm so glad that I didn't have the ending of this movie ruined for me.
Same.
Yeah. We do have an upcoming episode that is about a couple of other films that I'm going to lightly reference here. These are films that are typically classified as new Hollywood films. And I loved actually seeing this movie, having just discussed and seen those other films, because I think this movie also has like a very, I'm going to say, just new Hollywood type ending as well. Mm-hmm. In that you see this, our main character and the one who we are more or less rooting for, die in a very cold way at the hands of people who he is hoping are there to help him. What do we make of the ending of this movie? And are there any broader readings that we can take from the very sudden and careless way that Ben is murdered?
Yeah, there's this like militia that has appeared to try to take out the ghouls. Mm-hmm. And, I assume the next day in the sunshine, they approach the area around the cabin and somebody notices movement inside the house and it's Ben. And they just shoot on sight, kind of assuming that he's a ghoul or whatever.
He's one of the bad ones.
They spend not one moment, like even considering like doing their due diligence to see if this is actually like could potentially be a survivor. It's crazy to me, but it also feels so realistic.
It does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and I think, part of why it is such an affecting note to end on is that amidst all of these, you could say allegorical things that have happened up to this point, here is something that could absolutely happen in real life and look almost exactly the same, if not exactly.
Right.
And this ending to me, yes, New Hollywood is definitely a comparison that I felt watching it. It felt very Twilight Zone to me.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
I got you.
I can't point to its like by name, but there was an episode of that I saw once that was making an allegory about the Red Scare that included a scene where a character shoots someone on sight from a distance who he assumes is an intruder, only to find out it's his neighbor. And so, that's, the literal commentary about gun ownership, is, very potent there too. But, it really felt like Night of the Living Dead and the Twilight Zone shared some DNA over that sort of moral parable too.
The other thing that jumps out to me is, there are these still images that are happening over the credits where it seems like this militia has gotten a hold of a bunch of like meat hooks that they're using, I guess, to sort of like drag, these bodies to wherever they need them to be. That was the only way I could really make sense of it myself. Yeah. That image too is so difficult to watch. The dehumanizing nature of that. And, throughout the film, we're desensitized into being okay with that happening to one of the ghouls. But I think when we see it happening to somebody who, is the guy we're rooting for, and to know that he's being carted away in the exact same fashion is like... It's tough, and it's hard for me to watch this and not look at it from a perspective of it being kind of an allegory for what it must have been like to be a Black American in the 1960s, where it's like you might be the most level-headed person in the room, but you have to live in fear of being othered or backstabbed or killed just for trying to protect yourself.
Yeah, there are people that will not pay any attention, who will like have the wool over their eyes when it comes to who you are as a person. They literally only see what's on the surface and make their own assumptions.
Yeah. And another detail relevant to all of this in that last sequence too, that adds to this, is that, I mean, you also see alongside that militia, you see policemen with dogs.
Yeah.
It made me think of some very well-known photographs of events from the civil rights movement where you see the very same thing. As much as people are reduced to their survival instincts in events like this, I mean, the authority structures in the country still exist, as evidenced by that.
I think ultimately what strikes me is that this like militia, they're not a rescue party. And, you know, perhaps there are other rescue parties that have been deployed and who have formed, but I think the way in which they so senselessly shoot him down shows they're not here to save anyone.
Right.
They're here to hunt. They're here to take out the enemy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like saving people is not their concern. If saving people was their concern, they would make some sort of mention of like searching for survivors, and they do not.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that imagery of them using meat hooks to basically to transport all of the bodies, I mean, for a minute there, that kind of equates, even though the circumstances are different for Ben, that he hasn't been turned in the way the others have, that they are kind of rendered equal there. And then it makes you think about how, even though these people are pretty soullessly dragging off all these bodies, that, you know, these are formerly living people, and that even for people who have been turned into zombies, that, you know, there's still grief to experience as well.
Yeah, which we see in Barbara. Like, she refuses to accept the fact that Johnny is either one, dead, or two, undead.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, that, you know, going back to a comparison we made earlier to Shaun of the Dead, I mean, I think there is definitely that
there's,
sense.
There's a callback to that in there for sure.
There's the sense in that movie too, where there's like, it's not really leaning into the grief side of what's going on. I mean, you know, there's definitely that sense with, in what happens with Sean's mom in the movie, but with a lot of the larger body of characters, the ensemble, there's not really that grief sense, but that's played a little bit more towards British humor in that case, where there's, you know, just this kind of social satire about the lack of awareness of greater tragedy. And yeah, and I think, you know, it's, you can point to a lot of differences in the tone of that movie and this one, but yeah, they, you know, they have their ways of reminding you there is real grief here. Another detail I keep thinking of as we talk about this, that was technically something experienced off screen, but that added to to Julian Jones's portrayal of Ben, is that he did not like handling the gun that he had to handle throughout the movie. That he did it for the sake of the character, but I think he was vocal on set about the fact that he didn't like doing that, and you can sometimes see it in his performance.
I'd understand. Yeah, on a number of fronts, it makes a lot of sense. I did want to ask you guys one thing. Before I saw this movie, I thought that the living dead were actually dead people that had risen and were now undead.
Yeah.
They are styled to be normal people. There are not like people who look like they've been dead for a long time.
They're not just like all rising out of their graves at the cemetery.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and you know, this leads back a little bit into some of the commentary in this, which is, I think George Romero talked about how instead of obviously calling these zombies, that he saw them as dead neighbors. And this idea that your neighbor is actually somebody that it feels very distant from you, and this idea of closing yourself off from the world can kind of lead in some ways to your neighbors, even when they are well-intentioned, to feel like there's some enormous scary imposition.
Yeah.
Did you guys think that was what these were going to be like? I'm curious.
I mean, I have absorbed so much zombie media, clearly, and I don't think there's that many where the zombies are actively like popping out of the ground. Partially because we bury people in coffins, and that seems difficult because zombies are not that strong generally. So I didn't necessarily think they were going to be like popping up out of their graves or anything. I feel like this is kind of what I expected. I think on one of the news broadcasts they say something like, "Oh, you can turn very quickly." Like
Yes.
it's the recently deceased, I think, are who the people, like who the ghouls are the recently deceased. At one point, they say that places that are kind of hot spots are places like nursing homes.
Yeah.
Did you guys catch that?
I
That
did,
was
yeah.
crazy.
Nursing homes,
I do remember that now.
or
yeah.
like morgues and funeral homes too.
Exactly. It's like it's the recently deceased.
Yeah.
Imagine like just an entire nursing home of zombies.
Frightening.
Yeah.
Not ideal.
So you have the recently deceased, but then you also have the people they're attacking because you can turn from being bitten, like with the daughter.
Yeah. And then, I mean, even though the very first zombie that you see is in the graveyard, I mean, I guess it's implied there that he's risen from the grave. Maybe he was like recently
he looks
buried.
so normal.
But yeah, maybe he's just wandered there. And it's just more poetically fitting to have him appear in a graveyard.
Yeah, I think it's also because I've seen the first 20 minutes of this movie twice.
And so you're like, they're in a
because it happens
cemetery.
in a cemetery. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, like that's what it's going to be. So
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them around, so it would make sense that they all were popping up out of the graves because they got to extreme numbers pretty quickly.
they did. They
Right.
did.
And then, like, it being said in that cemetery at the very beginning, I just remembered a great story. This is going to sound crazy, but a great story of life imitating art that came up in the commentary that I was watching. And right at the beginning of it, too, like they really hit the ground running with this commentary, which was that sometime after, maybe like 20 years after the film was shot, that there was a tornado that hit that cemetery and knocked down a lot of the trees. And thus, about 200 bodies that were buried were brought up from the ground as a result.
I wrote that down too. That's awesome.
Yeah, you could tell in the commentary
That's
that they got a
crazy.
kick out of that.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like one of those cosmic moments.
How do we feel about the score?
Wasn't
Dougie thought it was a bit overzealous.
So I'm with Dougie on this. That was one of the things that was a little, and I know that this movie used a lot of pre-existing music. In some ways, I liked it because it was black and white and it had that like feeling almost of horror films from the 30s. The music is like very, very dramatic.
Yeah.
But I was looking more for like one of those like John Carpenter or like David Cronenberg synthy scores. And there are moments where that creeps in.
Yeah.
Yeah, after we finished the film and Dougie was like, I didn't like this score. I want to go back and watch a couple minutes on mute and put on different music. I'm pretty sure he put on One O Tricks Point Never. And I got to say, really works.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
maybe try that.
Maybe
Maybe I
take
should.
the Uncut Gems score and put it on Night of the Living Dead.
Exactly.
I think I would like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a great score.
I think the score in the movie, well, wasn't it made with mostly like stock music? I don't think it was written for the movie.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pre-existing stuff. It is a little all over the place. Like I feel like there's that one scene after Tommy and Judy blow up in that truck. There is kind of that like creepy like thing
Yeah.
going on, and I kind of dig that. I like that vibe for this kind of film. That being said, I felt like I did kind of get through most of that. So
Yeah. I think, it's like even if the music feels like, kind of stereotypical, like it's literally stock music.
yeah.
I think like I kind of expected that from honestly, the score was a little more than I expected. I was ready for this because of its very scrappy production nature to be kind of a scoreless movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all.
So it gave
Thank you guys
honestly, it gave it a little more of like a classical Hollywood flair to it.
That's what I thought of.
which
I was like,
liked.
it felt more like a Frankenstein or Dracula or something. So
Yeah.
in some ways, it kind of worked because it did visually kind of line up with that a bit as well. But it does. I mean, it does feel like a movie that is kind of ushering in a new thing.
Mhm.
And for that reason, I was like, I want something else.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Dougie and I can get together sometime and put
on What a Tricks Point
whatever we want.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I've absorbed a lot of zombie media in my time. And in college, I not only played the Humans versus Zombies game that was sweeping the nation in the early 2010s, I was like essentially a referee for this game on my college campus.
Interesting.
I mean, I was so into the zombie stuff, but somehow I never got to this, and so I really feel like I've come full circle on this on a personal level.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely a full circle feeling for me too in finally approaching this movie, because I think I'd been meaning to see it for a while. I had specifically wanted to see it last year because of just going through a little bit of a wave of just watching, last October classic horror movies that I had not forgotten about, but not gotten to up to that point. Things like The Exorcist and The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I had wanted to do it around then, but then, just life happened and I, swept it away. And now to come back to it now, it really feels like, as a cinephile, I've known that this is a movie one should watch for a long time. It's good to finally have checked that off. And, well, actually, this is, breaking away a little bit, but one other little detail that I noticed that I really want to mention is that during the scene where you have a bunch of the ghouls, you see them eating after the truck explodes. There's this one ghoul in there who has, most of them are pretty expressionless throughout, but one of them, you can tell the guy is just clearly enjoying what he's eating. He's just like, yum.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's like, well, that feels a little more expressive than a zombie would have the capacity to do, but it's still entertaining to watch.
Totally. Definitely. I thought I saw one that was in like a toga.
there's
I was wondering if it
too.
was like, had drifted over from like a college frat
from
party
a frat
or
house.
something.
Yeah, from like State College, Pennsylvania. Or
exactly, something like that.
Yeah. There's a naked one too. There's like a singular naked
one
zombie.
Yeah. I think there's always got to be a naked zombie, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the why for that.
Why
does there need to be a naked zombie?
I think it's like one of them just like couldn't get it together to like be dressed properly.
Maybe that's one of the ones that came from the morgue.
Yeah.
Could be.
Like an autopsy was being performed and that's when they rose.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a tag on the toe that we don't see.
That's very possible. Yeah.
So a lot of the actors in this don't go on to do a whole lot else. And so Emilio, you and I don't have Unlikely Shared Universe.
I'm afraid not. No, I was thinking of trying to do something with Dwayne Jones because in a very sleepy state, I saw the movie Ganja and Hess, and I know that he's in that too, but I don't remember it well enough, nor do I feel like I've earned the right to talk about it. So I've decided to also in a sleepy state bow out of the Unlikely Shared Universe game.
Dwayne Jones has the most fruitful career of anyone.
Yeah.
And even that, it's a little spotty.
Yeah.
I do feel like this movie, for better or for worse, like left quite an impression on his career acting and so forth.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect, as I think all three of us do, for Dwayne Jones. Unfortunately, we did not do Unlikely Shared Universe, but Julian, you attempted one.
Yes. So I'll tell you now that there are plenty of actors in this movie, but this doesn't hinge on an actor. This is more of an unlikely crossover of IPs. And this is going to sound like a strange big swing at first, but hear me out. I think you'll see where this is going.
Okay.
So let's say around 10 years before the events of this film, there were a bunch of students at an all-boys boarding school in New England who had a formative experience with a remarkably open-minded English teacher who encouraged them to form an extracurricular club based around reading the works of bygone poets. As tragedy befell one of their classmates and said teacher came under unfair scrutiny as a result, their school-based experience was shortened, but it left a lasting imprint on these young men and their teacher. And so when they hear...
my captain.
Yes. And so when they hear about the resurrection of deceased bodies as a result of the explosion of the Venus probe, these young men who have scattered about band together again to explore whether any of their poetic idols, maybe like Byron or Blake or Wordsworth, Any of these poetic idols of yore are among the bodies who have been resurrected. Naively hoping.
Are they
naively?
Are they buried in the United States?
Well, this, I'm not saying where this is. This could be in England. They could be there somehow.
Okay. Oh, got you. But this could be happening elsewhere in the world. Right?
Exactly.
Right,
yeah. This probe doesn't just affect the U.S.
Okay.
So these gentlemen naively hope that perhaps these individuals, the illustrious thinkers that they were, may have been of more sound undead mind than many of their bloodthirsty counterparts. Is this hunch to be trusted? Probably not. But if only we could find out in the story of the Living Dead Poets Society.
There we go.
Clap, clap, clap.
That's
clap,
very
clap,
good.
clap, clap.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
Yes, I applaud you as well.
Not going to lie, I've been saving that one up for a while.
Yeah, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I have a fun fact, which is that Dougie's uncle went to the Dead Poet Society school.
Oh, yeah. Exeter, is that the one?
Yeah, I think so.
Was he a part of this Dead Poet Society?
I don't think so. Not to
Okay.
my knowledge.
I'd have to imagine that now there just is like an honorary Dead Poet Society at this school.
I would imagine so.
And
Yeah.
it has to exist. Like somebody has to keep it alive.
Yeah, I mean, Dougie's uncle, I would imagine, was probably going to this school around the time this movie was coming out or possibly before. So while he was there, it was probably not on the front of everyone's mind.
Yeah.
Cool.
I just, it's because there's only so many movies that have dead in the title that are not zombie movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think before I ever saw Dead Poet Society, my immediate assumption was that there was even if it's not horror, that there was something supernatural about it, that it was some kind of ghost story or something like that.
Yeah, fair assumption.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Are there any last things that we want to say about this movie? Final thoughts? Closing statements?
Well, maybe it goes without saying, but I think it's pretty fitting that, we should discuss a movie called Night of the Living Dead on a podcast that's all about being sleepless.
That's true.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's all about, happening at night and being awake when others are not. And so, yeah, it's just, it feels meant to be.
Are you saying we're the living dead?
I definitely feel like
I'm
Living
saying
Dead
we're
right
one
now.
of those things. We're the living.
Yeah. I don't know. I am really glad I got around to this too. I do feel like it gave me more context to appreciate the only other zombie film that I've had like a deep connection to, which was Shaun of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
That was lovely, but I don't think I was prepared for how the ending of this movie really contextualizes so much of everything you see before.
Yeah.
And I think this is a fascinating film with a lot of layers, even if they weren't intended on being there. And so while I don't find this movie to be particularly effective as like a horror movie with like scares, I think that it gets at some really scary things about society in the 60s. For that, I think it's quite effective. And yeah, I'm so glad I saw it.
Cool.
Yeah. And I think, it's a testament to the power of art too, that this movie really was made with a lot of so-called crude materials, that this is a movie where the fake blood is chocolate syrup. And yet it's gone on to influence this entire genre that Madeline, you so diligently listed off, many other example of.
That's true. I had no idea that you had this long history with zombie stuff.
I kind of grew out of it. But and so like I said, I feel like I've come full circle. And, I still have a certain fondness for zombie media. Like I will still continue to catch the occasional zombie flick. I did not see Zombieland Double Tap. I'm really excited for season 2 of The Last of Us and gonna try my best over the next few months to keep things spoiler free for Julian. And if you've played the second game, then that's extremely difficult. In addition to this podcast, you can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can contact us via email. We would love to hear from you. Write to us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. If you're on Letterboxd, you can follow me, Madeline, at Patroness of Cats.
And you can follow me, Julian, at Julian_Barthold. If you are listening to us for the first time, thank you for finding us. If this is the second or third or 30th time you've listened to us, thank you for sticking with us. We have really grown to love doing this, and it means the world to have our budding listenership grow.
And if you haven't already, we'd ask you, return listener, to please write us a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. This is one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and help our podcast take its next steps. You can also keep it grassroots, and you can tell a friend to tell a friend about the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. That helps too.
They are coming to get you, Barbara.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, you can't avoid it. It was coming to get you.
Yes. All right, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.